RPA welcomes you to our YouTube channel, which will be featuring a video series that will follow the lives of various RPA leaders, some new to engagement with RPA and others more seasoned. They will candidly share their stories about volunteering in a professional association, work-life balance, personal and professional fulfillment, even money management, and why it's so important to volunteer in the RPA community. Enjoy their journey. Dr. Conlon, you are starting this whole financial stewardship and responsibility so young, so I wanted to ask you, were you very responsible with your money as a child or as a teenager?
So I learned at a relatively early age about financial responsibility and the value of saving and compounding that savings over time. So my father's a family physician who retired just a couple of years ago at age 63, and so he did very well and was able to put away money steadily all along. And he made a point, for example, when we were in high school, when we had jobs, he would put the earnings from that into a Roth IRA, so it was able to start our college savings as early as that. And then if you can compound that over decades, it grows to a pretty substantial sum by the time you're in retirement. And so I was taught that as pretty young. And then, even throughout college and medical school and after getting out of training, I wasn't perfect with my money, but then, especially in the last couple of years with having a couple kids and having to figure out how to save up for their school and stuff like that, I've kind of reinvested in the topic and, followed some blogs online, listened to podcasts about it. So, I've always been the one in the household that manages the money too and pays the bills and tracks the finances and stuff like that.
Why do you say that it's best to avoid credit debt as opposed to other debt?
I would argue if you're talking about debt in general, you want to minimize it overall. Specifically, why you would want to minimize credit card debt is because it tends to be extremely high interest. So credit cards are probably 15-20% interest, I think, which is way too high to be carrying around. And, ideally credit cards should be paid off in full every month. So, I think if you're good with saving up money and have an emergency fund and savings set aside, you can ideally, buy either a new or used car with cash and not overindulge. I think, you see doctors driving really expensive cars around, and a lot of times they're buying those on a lease or a loan, and yeah, they can afford the payments on it, but I would argue that the money could probably be spent elsewhere. So, there's some stuff you have to take loans out for, so you have to take out loans for your schooling because you can't afford that. You're going to have to take out a mortgage for your house, but, smaller purchases, your, day-to-day, month-to-month expenses on a credit card, those can be paid off ideally in full. And something like a car is a reasonable thing you can save up for and then have cash to cover. So, and when you buy the car, then all you have to do is pay for the maintenance. And if you run it well, you can drive a car for 10, 15, 20 years.
What do you think happens between having enough to meet basic needs to having more than enough, but then you find yourself in debt?
Well, there's a couple of things in play. So, even though you're having to live on a minimal income during college and medical school, a lot of times you're compounding debt, so that's just building up, but it's just kind of pushed to the side. You don't even think about it till you get out and you're not focusing on it. And so because you're forced to live on a resident or intern or fellow's paycheck, you have to budget. But then when you get out, what's happening is, whereas your friends and relatives have all been out of school for 5 or 10 years and they've gotten houses and done all this stuff, that you're looking and, all of a sudden you want to step up to that level of income. And so now I can buy a big house, or I can buy a boat or a nice car, or go on lavish vacations. And, because doctors overall don't tend to default on their loans, entities will gladly give you the money to buy it, even though they may not be the right thing for you.
What would some steps be in order to have that end of the career reward?
Well, a couple of things. You have to kind of think about and prepare for that transition from the school resident and fellow, where you're either generating debt or not making much income, to that sudden step up, and then have a plan what you're going to do with that money. And for one, it should include a plan to pay down your student loan debt. So, because that can be substantial and have a high interest rate in a lot of cases. Make sure your income's protected with the right types of insurance, and have in mind your long-term financial plans. So, do you want to save up to have a down payment for a house? If you have children, do you want to save up for their college? If you want to have an emergency savings fund, how much of your income are you going to set aside to that? So just have ideally a plan that's written down what you're going to do with it.
What age do you think you should perhaps get in touch with a financial advisor?
I think that's an individual-based decision. So, me personally, I don't have a financial advisor at this time just because I enjoy reading about financial topics and looking at websites, and I feel comfortable educating myself and managing the money in different buckets that I have it in. But not everybody's going to have that interest or want to take that up. And I think it's better to pay somebody with that expertise to guide you to make sure you're not making mistakes or going into investments that are, high fees or not the best or, not the right thing long term. And it's not terribly expensive to get the advice. There's per hour financial advisors that will sit and go over what you've got and help you come up with a good plan for all that.
You mentioned things in the article like umbrella insurance, disability insurance, life insurance. Why did you mention those specifically?
Your biggest asset as a professional getting out is your ability to earn a steady high income for decades, and you want to protect that. And the two biggest threats to that are that you get disabled or you die. And so life and disability insurance are protecting against both of those, so that, if something were to happen to you, that your loved ones were taken care of. So, and, if you talk to financial people, the disability insurance is technically more important because you're far more likely during your working years to become disabled than you are to die. And so that's also why that insurance costs a lot more.
Okay. Are there insurances or items that an early career should add to that list of insurance? Are there other type of items or things they should add?
Things they would probably be getting anyway. So umbrella insurance will sit above your home and your auto policy. So you're going to have auto insurance and home insurance, or renter's insurance if you're renting. And then the umbrella for relatively cheap, gives you a substantial increase in your liability coverage, which is good to have, so that if somebody were, say, injured on your property, then you wouldn't, worry about, it'll cover you probably $1 million. So if somebody had a $200,000 claim, then it covers it, no worries.
What advice can you give people as far as like not waiting too late to get help?
Well, I think in general, if there's just uncomfortable, you're not sure what to do with your money, then that's a good reason to do it. If you're getting into situations where you're not able to afford all of your different debt payments on a month-to-month basis and you're in too deep, that's a good reason, because then they can help you kind of dig out of whatever kind of mess you're in and kind of reset your situation. And you can need the help along the way in multiple different places. And the help can come in different forms. It can be your overall financial situation, but, even where I said I'm first in financial stuff, I've had to get help. Like when I had to get disability insurance when I was in training, and I can't do that on my own. I had to go find a disability insurance agent, and my wife and I recently changed our term life insurance because now we have kids and we need to protect against them. So I had to go to a broker that would shop the different companies and help me get it. And so, that's, you're well served to pay them for that service. So don't assume that people are doing as well as you think around you when you see other doctors at your practice, at your hospital, that just because they're driving in a really nice car or living in a really nice house, that everything they're doing wonderfully well. A lot of them probably are not as responsible as they should be. And you need to resist that urge to just think you need to keep up with everybody. Because in the end, when you get closer to retirement, it's going to feel a lot better if you've done everything more responsibly along the way.